Welcome, everyone. Happy March and happy International Women's Day for tomorrow, the 8th of March. Welcome to you all, wherever you join us from today. And an extra special welcome to all women, as well as anyone who was born of a woman or has ever known one. Welcome to you all. And now, as is our custom, I'll light our chalice as a symbol of our free religious faith. And if you have a candle and you'd like to light one with me now, then please do. May this flame be a symbol of the feminine that resides in each one of us, whatever our gender. Our capacity to be warm, nurturing, caring, strong, compassionate, and passionate. Amen. The 8th of March was also the date of the last service we held here before the church in Plymouth closed for lockdown 1. So tomorrow a whole year will have passed, but nevertheless we have continued to keep the flame alive, lighting our chalice each week as a sign of our commitment to each other and to all that we hold sacred. We have kept our Unitarian witness, and we continue to do so, whatever is happening in our lives or in the world. So let's sing our first hymn this morning, which is number 194 in the Purple Hymn Book. It's called "We Light the Flame." International Women's Day is a celebration and also a call to action. And so today is a chance for us to celebrate some of those women in our movement and beyond who have dissented, who have inspired, who have pushed boundaries on behalf of us all, and who, to follow on from last week's service, have committed to their passion and lived boldly, inspired by their faith and driven by love. So we come now to a time of prayer, and the prayer I'd like to share with you is by contemporary Unitarian Universalist writer and theologian, Rebecca Parker. Dear God, dear earth and sky, dear mystery, dear love, we pray today for this congregation, this vibrant gathering of tender hearts and hopeful spirits, of willing activists and deep contemplatives, faithful fools and genius misfits, prophets and artists and devoted workers, sleepy little ones and sturdy old ones, and weary middle ages, the lost, the searchers, and the anchors. May the people of this congregation see in one another the face of a holiness that calls us to abide in solidarity. May we be bathed in beauty that moves us to resist all that disparages human dignity, and to delight in that which is good. In times of brokenness, may the poetry of unexpected grace open us to humility and transformation. And in the face of the world's needs, may this church be a channel of our peace. May this church be a place of refuge from sorrow and distress, but not from the struggle to realize justice for all. May it be, for all, a balm for the cure of weary souls, a place the spirit of life can call home, and be gathered into the hearts of a people who love what is sacred and will defend it with all their hearts, minds, souls, and strength. Dear God, dear earth and sky, dear mystery, dear love, may it be so. We have a short story now, which has been pre-recorded for us by one of our newer members of our congregation, who's Poppy, who's joining us today, but she's pre-recorded this and she will read it for us now.
My heart has been there all my life, as told by Sr Joan Chittister. Once upon a time, in the rainiest part of the rainy season, an old monastic began her pilgrimage to the holiest shrine on the holiest mountain in the land. Forced back by fierce winds and driving rain, she stopped at the foot of the incline to check directions one last time. "Old woman," the inn master scoffed, This mountain is deep in wet and running clay. You cannot possibly climb this mountain now." "Oh, sir," the old monastic said, "the climb to the shrine will be no problem whatsoever. You see, my heart has been there all my life. Now it is simply a matter of taking my body there as well."
Thank you so much, Poppy. I think Myron and I are both very impressed with the quality of recordings that some of you are doing for us. If anyone else feels they'd like to have a go at that, do let me know. The reading, I'm going to share with you now some words from Carolyn McDade. You may recognise her name. She's a singer, songwriter, and including having written some of our hymns. She's not actually a Unitarian, but she's quite closely associated with Unitarian Universalists, and we will be singing one of her songs later. But these are some words she's written about what singing means for her. "My singing as a child, what I now know as prayer, was freed from the language of church. It was buoyancy that held without confinement, that affirmed my capacity to shape my heart into sound, that took my burrowed and expansive treasure of being and poured it in real voice upon the air that touched my piano, solid and wood, air that floated my unexplainable self to whatever ears beyond the wall might hear. It was an act of childhood courage and innocence to sing. What I know now, it is still an act of courage to sing, to really sing, in the way that disrobes the heart and lays its curve into the world, that leaves the soul whole and the body shining. Such singing as women leads us into confrontation with entrenched and unjust power. To be true to its timbre, the human voice requires authenticity of body, language, community. In this society, when we shape our body and our sexual energy with integrity, tell what we know with candour, and create communities committed to the well-being of the whole, we invariably shake the status quo. Singing does not automatically carry us there. When singers become the singing, however, some horizon, both inner and outer, opens. And we know, if only briefly, why we live. Such moments do not assure that our plans will succeed, but we know what is worth doing. We have become part of the singing river, the long voice that has held, washed, and laid down 10 million mornings of song, yet still rises with her bag of sounds and rubs the currents of river and wind over bare rock, bearing witness to all that exists in the moment. Words from Carolyn McDade. So I'm going to invite you now to come into a period of reflection. We will begin with some silence, but then that will be followed by a video of Melanie Demoore singing Shine on Me. She is a Unitarian Universalist, and she describes herself as a vocal activist. So I think something a little bit like Carolyn was speaking of. For her, singing is more than just singing. So please take this time to enter into just a time of quiet for yourself, to use how you wish.
Hello, UU family. I'm going to sing a song with you called Shine on Me. It's an amazing spiritual that anybody can sing. And in these days when the things that we're dealing with, the feeling separate and all of that, and things seem so hard, this is one of those songs that you just throw your head back, put it in your medicine kit. All you have to do is ask. And here's how it goes. Shine on me, oh shine on me. Let the light from the lighthouse shine on me, oh shine on me, yes shine on me. Let the light from the lighthouse shine on me. Lift me up, oh, lift me up. Let the light from the lighthouse lift me up, oh, lift me up, yes, lift me up. Let the light from the lighthouse lift me up, oh, hold me close, yes, hold me close. Let the light from the lighthouse hold me close. Yes, hold me close. Oh, hold me close. Let the light from the lighthouse, please, hold me close. Oh, shine on me, shine on me, yes, shine on me. Let the light from the lighthouse shine on me, oh, shine on me, yes, shine on me. Let the light from the lighthouse shine on all you have to do is just ask. The light is always there. Always. Always.
Thank you, Melanie. I don't often talk about Unitarian history, but I am going to do that today. Because there's a venerable tradition of women in British Unitarianism, or at least closely associated with it, who have made their mark on the world in all sorts of creative, progressive, and sometimes radical ways. This was especially true from the end of the 18th century to the beginning of the 20th century. I don't know of any singers in that period, but writer and feminist philosopher Mary Wollstonecraft, for example, novelist, biographer and short story writer Elizabeth Gaskell, novelist Mary Ann Evans, perhaps better known as George Eliot, and children's author and illustrator Beatrix Potter. Perhaps they're the best known names, but there are many others. Harriet Martineau, the sister of theologian James Martineau, who's actually better known, but Harriet was widely considered to be the first female sociologist in the UK. Frances Power Cobb, an Anglo-English writer, was also a social reformer, anti-vivisectionist, and campaigner for women's suffrage. Gertrude von Petzold not only became the first female Unitarian minister in 1904, but the first woman minister of any denomination in the UK. And more recently, Dorothy Tarrant, a classical scholar specializing in Plato, became the first female professor of Greek in the UK. There are plenty more outstanding women in our history. And I do recommend Anne Peart's book, Unitarian Women, A Legacy of Dissent. And actually I have drawn on that. Let's put it somewhere where you can see it quite a bit in this service. It's actually very readable, interesting history. And she makes the point that women were not only dissenters in theological terms, through being Unitarian, but they also dissented from the prevailing views on social norms and from what was considered appropriate behaviour and suitable employment for women at the time. And so they were double dissenters, as Anne Peart puts it. By the way, to my shame, I only discovered this week, researching this service, that Mrs. T.B. Broderick, whose own first name seems to have become lost in the mists of time, became the second woman after Gertrude Petzold to appear on the roll of Unitarian ministers when her husband, who was minister at Bridgewater, died, and she took over from him for a year, and she then served as minister in charge at Lewins Mead Domestic Mission in Bristol and as a supply preacher in the Western Union. So well done, Bridgewater and Bristol and the Western Union. But I wanted to share the story of an earlier and more prominent West Country woman, Mary Carpenter. Mary was born in Exeter, but moved with her family to Bristol when she was 10, where her father, Lant Carpenter, was Unitarian minister at the aforementioned Lewins Mead. It was here that her passion for educational and social reform took hold. A According to Anne Peart, it was in the 1830s that several events occurred which led to Mary recognising this was going to be her life's work. Firstly, there was rioting in favour of the Reform Bill, which was to make major changes in the electoral system, although not for women at that point. This was followed by an outbreak of cholera, which was particularly bad in the low-lying areas around Lewins Mead Meeting House, and the women in Mary's family did their best to relieve some of the suffering with gifts of food, clothing, and fuel. Then there was the visit of the reforming Indian Raja Ramahan Roy. He was a friend of Mary's father, Lant. Unfortunately, the Raja fell ill and died, but Lant was able to enable the necessary Hindu rites to be performed at a private burial for him. And then there was a visit by an American Unitarian minister, Joseph Tuckerman, who had developed his own ministry of visiting the homes of the poorest people in his hometown of Boston. And Mary accompanied him on his explorations of the poorest parts of Bristol. And when a small, ragged boy ran across their path, so the story goes, Tuckerman remarked, "That child should be followed home and seen after." And Mary always remembered that as a turning point in her life. The Lewins Mead congregation established a women's working and visiting society, which engaged in social work in the immediate area, and a needlework group, which supplied warm clothes to the poor. And Mary was the secretary and the main organiser of both of these groups. Anne Peart writes that Tuckerman's insistence that children should not suffer because of inadequate care became Mary's Bible, together with his assertion that human nature is never to be given up. There is no condition so desperate as to forbid recovery, nor does repeated failure justify discouragement. Those were his words, and they made a big impression on Mary. And she always maintained her connection with American Unitarians and Reformers and supported their anti-slavery work, even though she was troubled by the factional divisions. And so the Ragged School movement got underway in England, started in Portsmouth. Mary was aware of this, and in 1846 she established a school herself in a room in Lewins Mead, supported by the congregation and by a local Unitarian doctor, John Bishop Estlin. She always insisted that the children should be treated with respect. She provided food and other necessities and gradually extended and expanded the school to introduce more subjects, but always centred on the needs of the children. She wrote an influential book called Reformatory Schools for the Children of the Perishing and Dangerous Classes, which is quite the title. In it, she claimed that love and the recreation of a supportive family environment were more effective than physical punishment. She established 2 more schools in Bristol with help from Lady Byron, the estranged wife of the poet. And she divided her time between running the schools, caring for individual children, writing and lobbying for improved understanding and treatment of deprived children. And though she was a reluctant speaker, at first she soon became a regular at the newly formed National Association for the Promotion of Social Science, and gradually became much more in the public eye. She developed strong connections with India, inspired by the earlier connection with Ramahan Roy. She even founded schools there, although not all of them were successful. And she set up the National India Association, which had branches in different parts of the UK, and edited its journal until her death. In 1873, Mary visited the United States, and she saw there that women were active in public office. And she began to speak in church pulpits herself. In the last year of her life, after what had been some earlier reluctance, she joined the struggle for women's suffrage. And she shared a platform with her old friend, Frances Power Cobb, at a meeting of the Bristol and West of England Society of Women's Suffrage. When she died in 1877, Mary was considered the leading female advocate of deprived and delinquent children in England. And there's a stone memorial in her honour that was placed in Bristol Cathedral. So I share this story with you just as one example of the kind of thing that women, Unitarian women, have dedicated themselves to in the past. And their rich legacy still speaks, I think, to us all, women and men. Of course, it's not our job to be like them. They are from a different time. But we are always each called to be ourselves, whatever our gender, to follow our hearts as they did theirs, to look around us and see what needs to be done, and to do what we can, to bring our own particular gifts to the world in our own special way. I know that many of us have done these things and still do these things in our lives, even if we're not destined to end up in the history books. Others of us may yearn to. Maybe we're not sure how, or it feels too daunting. But if so, then take heart. Remember our forebears, and remember the old monastic women in Sr Joan Chittister, Chittister's story, who said, "The climb to this shrine will be no problem whatsoever. You see, my heart has been there all my life. Now it is simply a matter of taking my body there as well." So, may it be so. I promised you that our second hymn would be one written by Carolyn McDade, and it is. Carolyn wrote Spirit of Life, and she wrote Come Sing a Song With Me, which I know are two favourites of many people. However, today I've chosen one that felt particularly appropriate for the day, and it's one she wrote for her own daughter, and it's called Boldly Live, My Daughter.
Shall waters be
I'd like to offer some closing words from another exceptional West Country woman and friend of ours, Kay Millard. Dimming the flame lets memory rest. Dimming the flame lets love grow again. Dimming the flame sets life free to live. Dimming the flame lets all go in peace. Amen.